This is the opening of the show, is us having fucking tech problems.
Yeah, I know. We're like scrambling this morning. Michael forgot his computer. I couldn't log into my Chrome.
This is your coffee.
Yeah, I know.
I'm so sorry.
And then
I was like,
Michael
that just tastes like coffee.
Michael got his coffee.
Sorry.
Everybody's grabbing like
Everything's
the
going
wrong
wrong.
coffee. We're just like,
Cheers.
it's a
We're
little...
normally more organized than this, I promise.
I think something's wrong with Google today. No, it's gotta be Chrome because I could sign into my Safari account.
Oh, I have it here, Lian, if you need us to see it.
Okay, Michael's got it. We're good. Today we chat with Corey Frost, a Florida native now living in Charlotte, North Carolina. With his roots in music and sports, Corey harnessed his passion for filmmaking and became popular on Twitter for sharing valuable Avid and post-production tips. He shows his journey of connecting with the larger editing community while being away from the main film hubs and how he has acquired enough air miles to circumnavigate the globe. We discuss how Corey transforms networking into genuine friendships and how he keeps family at the heart of his post-production career. Just remember, it's all about the journey, not the destination. We're so glad to have you here, but I guess let's get into it. Since I'm all phone off this morning, I'm like, wait, what do I start with?
You start with what we're sipping on. Do you have anything?
No. We gotta start with welcome to this episode of Sips and Clips. My name is Lian McFalls.
My name is Michael Schusterman.
And as I said, we are all discombobulated today, but we have Corey Frost on our podcast, zooming in all the way from North Carolina. Corey, you want to say hi to the people?
Hello. How's everybody doing?
We're doing great.
Yeah, that's the response. The empty.
Woo!
Oh my gosh.
Yay! But Corey is what would you describe yourself?
I would say I'm a film and television editor. I've done a lot of unscripted, and now I'm trying to transition into more scripted projects.
All right, cool. So Corey's an editor. He'll talk to us all about what it's like living on the opposite side of the country while also being away from Hollywood Central. But first, we've got to start with what we're sipping on, as Michael switched it up today.
I did. I went to Phil's.
Phil's Coffee. Shout out to Phil's. Corey, what are you sipping on over there?
Do you have anything?
Yes, I did. I picked it up just for you guys on the way back.
Oh.
I got a Starbucks iced coffee, and I have 2 pumps of vanilla and a quarter splash of oat milk, and that is it. That's my order. All the time, I stay consistent.
Wow.
Wow.
Pretty solid.
Yeah.
You know how you can tell someone's a Starbucks aficionado if they know about the pumps, if they're like only 2 pumps. That tells me you know what you're talking about.
We can get into this rant later, but Starbucks started charging extra for the pump of sweetener.
Yeah.
But if you do 1 pump, it's the same price as 40. So they're really screwing it up over here.
Did you say it's the same price as 40?
Yeah, if you want 40 pumps, it's 80 cents. If you want 1 pump, it's 80 cents. It doesn't make any sense.
I was like, wait, are you getting 40 pumps of something? That's
Why not?
insane.
Why not? Maybe you gotta get that vanilla sweet cream in your fucking veins or pumpkin spice in your veins.
Give it to me. All right, Michael, what are you sipping on?
I am always partial to the seasonal drinks of any place. So they had a large caramel banana brew. So I thought I would try that. I thought I would try that. I really like banana, like artificial banana, which I may be the only person in the world that likes artificial banana. But I was like, I'll try it. It's pretty good. It's pretty decent.
I will say that I saw that as their seasonal drink, and I was like, oh, caramel banana.
You don't like banana?
I don't like banana, artificially flavored banana, like you just said that you love.
At some point, you gotta go with the times. I'm like an old man. I like tapioca pudding, and I like artificial banana, and I like remembering the war, and I like.
Do you also like black licorice?
I don't like black licorice. That shit's gross.
No,
that shit's nasty. By the way, this is a bit of a side tangent, but I wanted to just shout out that one of the Wordles I think a week ago was kefir.
Oh my god!
It was. I got it on the last one, and all of my friends, we all do the Wordle every day, and they got it, but they didn't know what it was. They're like, what the fuck is this? And I was like, I don't know how to tell you this, that I had like a hour-long discussion about kefir milk the other day, so I did know what this was, but I was like, this is insane that kefir is bleeding into my regular day-to-day life.
That's amazing.
Are you still drinking kefir? You were for a bit.
I'm still drinking it like every day, yeah.
Wow.
I also went with the seasonal drink. I went with a small spiced vanilla soul with creamy spiced vanilla oat milk, sweet brown sugar, made with love by Matt.
Yeah, Matt also made mine as well.
Love it.
Shout out to Matt at the Phil's
Shout
in
out to
Studio
Matt
City.
at Phil's Coffee.
Corey, I'd also like to point out, you and I have never talked before today, but this is so trippy seeing your face because you and I have been following each other on Twitter for years now.
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
And so I'm so used to your like little profile picture with the glasses that seeing your actual face is like, I'm like, it's very like, oh, that's what he looks like.
Yeah, right. I think
you know. Well,
you
before,
and
I don't know if you still
else.
use Twitter. Yeah, I feel like Twitter has become such a it's become such a dumpster fire. I don't know if you're still on it, but that's what I associate Corey Frost with is that profile picture of like that silhouetted guy with the sunglasses or whatever, right?
Yep.
That's my like assumption of what you look like, and that you're like an amorphous blob in a black void, just speaking about post on Twitter.
It's like it's a metaverse world. We're all just living in it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Corey, let's get into your story. Let's get into the show here. Why don't you just walk us through how you got into post, how you got started, that whole general gist.
Yeah, I feel like my story is very unorthodox and the journey is very weird. And I was never into film per se. I was more into like sports growing up and music. And my family was kind of blue collar. My grandfather was a pool builder and he employed all of my uncles. And my mom was a florist who ran her own small business. And my dad also worked in the pool industry as well. So I was never kind of destined to be in filmmaking. I know like I rag on my dad all the time that he told me to get a business degree and that art doesn't pay the bills. And that you'll never make a living doing film and television. But music was a big thing growing up. In my grandparents' house, my great-grandmother lived with my grandparents, and she had a piano in the house. And we'd practice and mess around with it. We never really kind of became classical pianists. But I always thought it was interesting, the stories that they would tell us that she used to play in the theaters live in the 20s for silent films. And I always thought that was really interesting. And it kind of like, it was an anecdote that kind of stuck in my head as a kid and getting into music and art and following that side of it. And then as I grew up, I just became enamored with like how things made me feel. I think the first movie I ever cried at when I watched it was Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet.
Wait, I need to backtrack for a second. You said that your grandmother used to play piano for silent films?
Yes. My great-grandmother, she was a pianist. And so she would play live in theaters to the music.
Did you not know they did this?
No, I did.
Oh.
I knew that they did this, but you know someone who did it.
Yes.
Or you related to someone who did it. That's like so cool.
Yes. I was so young growing up and I didn't, and as a kid, you don't think it's very interesting, but I just thought, oh, that's a cool idea. And then as I grew up, I got into filmmaking, I thought it was even more fascinating. I wish I had to ask more questions, but yeah, they would play the soundtrack in the theater before the advent of sound, of course. And yeah, I thought it was always fascinating.
That's so cool. Okay. So, you became enamored with like Baz Luhrmann films. Is that what kind of?
Yeah, I think like Romeo and Juliet
made you interested?
Was such a unique film to me because that was one of the first films I saw that was wild and so different in terms of style and editing. And then also like from an emotional level, it was one of the first films I ever cried at as a kid. And I was like, oh, wow, television and movies can make you feel this. And I was probably, I don't remember exact age, but I was probably like in the 9 to 11 range. And I just, that feeling of how music and filmmaking can come together and make you get those goosebumps on your arm and the hair raises. I always was enamored with that feeling, which is ultimately why I went into music, because I thought music was the way I experienced that the most. And that was just an easy path. Like there was no filmmaking groups in our school in Florida. And it was music that was kind of the bulk of what our school was about. So I played trumpet in school and I just kind of followed that angle while also playing sports in middle school, high school. So it was this like sports.
Sorry, did you go? You said music. You grew up in Florida?
Yeah,
Is that where you were born and like?
Yeah,
raised?
I was born in Fort Lauderdale, South Florida. And then our whole family lived on the East Coast, a little bit north of there, a couple hours north in the Vero Beach, Sebastian area. So it was like small little beach town. Everybody knew each other. It was the closest you can get to like a southern small town in the state of Florida.
Okay, cool. So around, I guess it sounds like you were kind of mainly focused on music and sports. What made you realize that, oh, now I want to jump into film?
Yeah, I think, in middle school, I started getting more engrossed into the idea of like becoming a filmmaker. It was more general. I think a lot of people will say and have a similar story who become editors is I wanted to direct and I wanted to be in LA or New York, and I wanted to kind of have that Hollywood experience. And I was lucky enough to have a mentor at that age, like right around 8th grade. My mom knew a filmmaker who was a Disney Imagineer who was working on big Epcot projects, like interactive things. And she had, interviewed people like Steven Spielberg and Oprah for like, these little pieces in museums. And she was really helpful in guiding me. And then as I got into high school, I started getting more into editing, doing wedding videos and small little videos for school. And then I just kind of got the itch, like really. I knew I wanted to do it young. I didn't know how I was going to accomplish that. And then as I got into high school and started experimenting with, I think there was an old NLE. It was probably a third party called Video Maker or something along those lines. And I was just cutting things like slideshows for the family. And I think that was really where I went all in at that point. I told my family about it, and my mom actually knew somebody who built computers, and she pretty much asked them like, well, what is the go-to computer build and what software? And they said it was Avid, and you needed to kind of build your own custom computer for it. And then there was like a little dongle that plugged into the back that activated the license
I remember
key.
that.
So she somehow wrangled enough money to kind of figure that out.
Your mom got you an Avid iLock?
Yes, yes.
That's insane.
Yeah, so at that point, then people leaned on me for like if they had a video for projects or school or something like that. And I'd almost like use that as a way to get out of writing papers.
This is all still in high school, right?
Yes. And that was like my go-to. Like if there was a project that was a singular project or a group project, I would suggest, we should make a video. Like we can tell this history in a video and people will be impressed, right? I think that was always my mindset. And so I just leveraged that kind of creative side. And then at this point, it's at the peak of high school, and I started thinking about film school. Like that was my mindset. I thought of 3 schools. It was at the time, Full Sail in Orlando was new, and it was state of the art, and that was interesting.
I thought about going to Full Sail. I was like, oh, that's like a really big film school. And then I think I looked at the cost, and I was like, no.
Yes, I think definitely the cost scared me. We actually flew out to USC in California, and we were at the back of the line. And somebody at the front raised their hand. Oh, well, how much is it going to be? And they said it for the semester. And I just looked at my mom like, there is 0.0 chance that we'll have that much money. And it's funny because I got my application for their film school and I filled it out, and I realized that I was getting close to the deadline. And so I was like, okay, I got to get this together. I got to get my portfolio, whatever it needed. I kind of got busy with school and music and stuff like that. And then I passed the deadline. I was so disappointed in myself at that point that I still went to the post office a day after the deadline, and I sheepishly gave them my application and I mailed it anyways. And I think it was always this thing to me that I now needed to prove it to myself that I could do this kind of work. It was just always this thing that I put the pressure on myself to kind of like, you can't miss that again. You can't, if you want to do this for a living, you can't do that.
You have to be serious.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really put the pressure on me. And so at that point I looked at Full Sail and UCF. But again, like I didn't grow up with, this cinema mindset. Like going to the movies was dates. But yeah, so at that point, my mentor, her name was Barbara Groth. She really sat me down one time on the phone, and I said I was going to go to Full Sail, and I think I was leaning towards there. And she said that the greatest filmmakers that she has talked to and the people that were at the top of their game knew more about everything across all types of learning. And it wasn't just within an embedded filmmaking type education. She always recommended that if you do anything beneficial, if you're going to go to film school, that you go to a 4-year university and really experience life and not just art and not just focused on technical abilities.
I really like that piece of advice, especially for kids these days who want to do film and they think, oh, I need to go to the best film school. You know, we've talked multiple times on this show that like, you don't really have to go to school, but also you don't have to go to the top film school of all time in order to like be successful. Like you can if you want to. If you want to experience that, then like go for it. It's not necessary.
It's also not a pass. I mean, if you go to USC these days, there is no golden ticket waiting for you at the end.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. Or if you go to AFI,
or if you go to Chapman or LMU or any of them, it doesn't matter really. It matters what you do after a hell of a lot more. So you go to UCF, you do 4 years at UCF. How was that?
Yeah, it was great. I think, again, I was still on the directing mindset at this point. I was editing my own projects and I was also helping other people edit their own short films, but I was still writing and directing my own short films. It was a great experience. I felt like a fish out of water because people were talking about like Wong Kar-wai and these amazing films. And I was like, what? Who is that? Like, I don't know anything. It was always like, I was always kind of like swimming upstream. I felt in film school. And then my senior year, after I had done 3 shorts, there was a professor who was trying to get a documentary track. And she really challenged us to try something new and tell different types of stories. And so I agreed to go on a documentary track my senior year and make a film. I made a film, deeply personal film about my grandfather and his identical twin brother, both polar opposites in terms of how they lived their lives and who they were. And so it's this kind of challenge to make a personal film about my family and their relationship and how it was kind of fractured with their differences. And that really changed my whole perspective of what filmmaking was and how to tell stories. And that's what sent me on a path to docs.
Wow. So you left UCF and you were like, I want to work in the script, that I want to work in docs.
Yeah. And then after UCF, I got an internship with NFL Films up in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, which I'm sure Lian knows where that is.
I've heard of NFL Films. I know there's been a few people in college who had like done internships there and stuff like that.
This is kind of getting to the root of my question that I'm curious about is I mean, nowadays you're working out of North Carolina, but I would assume as you left UCF, other film students would either, I guess this is 2005, so they would have been going to New York. No one really would have been going to Atlanta at that time. I just assume most of your classmates were going to New York. Was there not a pressure? I guess you went to New Jersey. Was there not a pressure to move up to, the Northeast?
There was. And I always thought about it. But I think most people that I knew that were coming out of UCF were going to LA. They were going to LA. Several people that I went to film school with are still out there right now. And they're doing great things. And I just, I think because I got onto that documentary unscripted track and then I got lucky enough to be an intern at NFL Films, it kind of forced me into this new world. I went from narrative to a new world of docs. And then I went to the sports television world, which I never even thought was a possibility to work and make a living in.
Did you ever think about coming to LA or
Yes.
did you?
Yeah. I constantly thought about LA and I always questioned decisions that I made about like, am I making a choice that is going to negatively impact my career and not move to LA? Or stay in New York. And then when I was at NFL Films, I would actually train into the city and I would try to meet different production companies and figure out, okay, well, maybe I'll have a job after this in the Northeast and I'll stay up there and figure it out.
The city being New York?
Yes, New York City. Okay. And then I met with 2 or 3 major production houses that did commercial work. And I was really just trying to find a spot, like get my claws into like that work. And it just never worked out. There was never a job up there at the time. And then at NFL Films, after the internship was done, they didn't bring me back as like a seasonal. So I was like, okay, well, what the hell do I do now? Is it like back to Florida? Is it to LA? Is it to, maybe I stay here? I found out through a lot of producers at NFL that several of them had gone down to Charlotte, North Carolina to start the NFL Films at NASCAR.
Oh.
I was like, okay, great. There's a job open. It's an archival assistant, I think it was, or archival logger. I found an interview through the network, and I got that job, and that's how I kind of landed in Charlotte and never really left.
Oh, wow.
How interesting.
So how long have you been in Charlotte now?
I've been in Charlotte since 2011.
Wow. So 14 years.
Yeah. So
14
years. I stayed at NASCAR for a year, and then I got an associate producer job at Speed Channel, which was doing all the live shows. It was basically like a sports center for racing. And that's where I really started accelerating post-production and learning how to cut and tell stories very fast at deadlines every single day. And I stayed there for about 3-ish years. And I really dove into like live sports broadcast and cutting packages for air. I just became very fast at what I do.
I'm just curious, how much work opportunities were there in Charlotte outside of kind of some of these niche specific businesses? You know, I'm wondering, like, as you finish one thing, how are you finding the next thing in such a limited market?
Yeah, and I think that was the challenge. I struggled balancing that. And so, even at my time at NASCAR for a year, I would take sick days and I would take personal days off to walk across the street and PA for other shows that came into town briefly. So I was a PA for The Bachelorette, I think season 11. I don't remember what it was exactly, but I would just take these days off and then I would walk across the street to the Westin Hotel and I would office PA and work for The Bachelorette. Or there was another one that came in town. It was Yard Crashers that came into town for DIY Network, and I would go over there.
And when you say PA, you're talking about like while they're
on set
in production, or while they're post?
Yeah, on set. There was no post. The only place, the places that had post were the two places that I was employed with. So I was never leaving there in terms of where I wanted to be, but I was finding other opportunities to kind of get that Hollywood itch off my back and to tell myself like, oh, it's fine. You'll figure it out because the things will come to you if you put in the work. So that was always my mindset. Yeah. And so like you talk about opportunities, they were short stints of things. But I was just trying to find every piece that came into town.
I mean, I don't know how to necessarily do. I want to say new media is the world that you're kind of in, but it's not new media. It is traditional broadcast television, but it is kind of new media in the sense of like you aren't, working in one of the major markets. You're not working in LA, New York, or Atlanta, and you are trying to just kind of figure it out as a bit of an independent filmmaker in a more regional market. We talk a lot on our show with people who are going down the very traditional union path. And I'm curious if that was also kind of your mentality. Like, were you thinking like, I need to become a PA and then I need to become an assistant and then I got to work a few years as an assistant and then I become an editor? Or were you more just thinking, I work in post-production, I'm an editor, and I will do anything and everything that is in the realm of post-production?
I think that was more my mindset. The assistant route and the traditional path that a union would set up was never an option for me. There was never like assistant jobs. I mean, the closest to an assistant I've ever been back when I started was the NASCAR like metadata logger. That was as close as I could get. And I would help producers do things. But in really, like, we were also cutting things for air. Like my first year at NASCAR, I cut several little packages for Showtime and HBO. So things were kind of accelerated in that sense, where you had more opportunity to cut than I think a traditional like post PA type position would. And then when I went to Speed Television, that became Fox Sports. There were PAs, but like they were still doing all the work. So like the PAs and the APs would cut coming up bumpers and teases and opens. To me, I always wanted to cut stories. So I walked in offices of the coordinating producers and I would tell them like, hey, we need to cut like a story of the race that's very artsy and cinematic. They're like, well, we can't do that. We don't have enough time in a day. And I just said like, I'll do it. I'll figure it out. And so at some point they gave me an opportunity to cut a 6-minute doc short, basically. And it aired every Monday after the race. The races were usually Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening. And I would show up at 4 a.m. on Monday. I would cut all day, about till 3:30. I'd go record my narration for the voiceover. I would cut that in about 3:45, 4. Show airs at 5. So now I have about an hour to then send that to audio, send that to color. At that point, I was subtitling all of the race audio. And then at 4:50, we'd be watching down and QCing the cut. And so it was really a grind. You know, we would send the cut probably around 5. And the closest we ever got, normally we'd send it to the control room. But then on this particular day, we had to play it live from the edit room. So we hit spacebar, and there was an 11-second difference from what I was seeing in the edit suite and what was airing live on the television. So if a media went offline or like a crash in the system,
you had 11
it would go
seconds
straight to air.
Oh my God.
So you were like, you know, new cut,
trial by fire.
New cut coming in hot, new cut.
Yeah. And I was, you know, late 20s, you know, and that pressure kind of built who I am. And then eventually you just get so good at making choices. And I think that is what editing is all about, is making a choice and how to tell a story efficiently and as quickly as you can, especially for air on those types of deadlines. There's no excuse. They don't have anything else for that block. So you just got good at not screwing up too badly.
I want to pivot a little bit, but I'm curious because I feel like you're a big cheerleader for people on Twitter, or at least you were. I haven't used Twitter in a few months, so I don't know if you're still on it, but I'm curious, you know, you're doing this stuff on speed television, you're doing this all this stuff. Kind of at what point did you get clicked into the broader editing community? When did you kind of realize that there were these like institutional centers of editing and these, you know, and there's places like ACE and MPEG? Like when did that realize for you that you were like, oh, my world for editing can be outside of the Charlotte film market?
Yeah, and I think I didn't realize that. I mean, when you think about how long I've been kind of cutting, and I went from speed and Fox to long form docs and shows and series, COVID to kind of slow me down mentally, like in terms of like seeing things clearer. I got so caught up in unscripted. I got so caught up in taking every job I could that I was so burnt out by COVID that I needed a break. I needed a complete reset, and to remember that like, at some point towards the end, of the before COVID, I think I was just chasing a lot of money projects, and I was making a great living, and I was just saying yes to like whatever I could to kind of feel like I was worthy, you know, of being in Hollywood.
And just a question, are these projects you're saying yes to, are these, at this point, are they still exclusively to Charlotte, or are they television packages you're doing for ESPN and they're just reaching out to you and they don't really give a shit where you are?
Yeah, no, they became like, after I got into the short form kind of television packages, I got into like unscripted series. So like sports series, like we did Coach Snoop on Netflix and All or Nothing on Amazon Prime. And so I was actually cutting these episodes. And again, like I was never an assistant editor, really. I was just I was using all of the skills that I learned in live television and applying them. And people were like, wow, he can cut a full episode in a very short amount of time. Like that is useful.
And you're just cutting this remotely. Like these producers are reaching out to you and they don't really care where you are.
Yes. Most of the producers when I started out were people that had worked at NASCAR or NFL Films in the past. And they were looking for people in Charlotte because that's where they were all based. And so before remote editing was ever a thing, we were all working off of drives at our houses on our little islands. Occasionally we'd go in person to their house, but it was like in the kitchens of people's homes.
Wow.
Oh, wow. So this really was a regional market in Charlotte specifically. Like it was people who were like, we're going to do Coach Snoop. We're going to do the post of that in Charlotte because that's where the producers are.
Yes. Yeah. And that was that's where all of our kind of little clique of people were. And I think it goes to show you like how important relationships are in the industry and how necessary it is to like get out there. A lot of those people would then recommend me for other projects, and they would say like, oh, he worked on Coach Snoop, he can do that. And I would get connected to, the web of that person's radar. And it would just become kind of like, as you guys know, that kind of trickle down effect of, how you meet people and get a project. Each kind of spider webbed out from a whole bunch of people and became this little regional remote working place. And then 2020 hit, and I was just, I was exhausted, and I was trying to remember like why I got into it in narrative filmmaking and storytelling. I was just like, man, I want to get back in the scripted. But I had spent my entire career in unscripted. And then I started asking people questions. I would cold email an editor or on a project that I like. And they were like, yeah, you're not going to be able to make that lateral move. You're going to have to start thinking about how you navigate narrative differently. And then at that point, I was like, okay, well, I got to learn how to be an assistant for narrative projects. Well, how do I do that? Nobody here has ever done it. So that's when I found that community online in post chat and the LACPUG events. And I was like, oh my God, there's like a community of post-production people out here. And that's how I just met everybody. I just found a community online and I attached myself into it to kind of see what other people were doing. And that's how I found out about ACE. Like, I had no idea what ACE was until 2021.
I met you at Edit Fest, and I had learned through a friend of the pod, Zach Griffin, who will be mixing this episode, but he introduced me to you, and he was like, Corey is from North Carolina, and he flew out here for the weekend just to come to Edit Fest. And I remember thinking, oh my God, you flew just for this event? Like, that's insane.
And Edit Fest was really kind of my intro to ACE in general. It became this like hub of people that allowed me to like interact and find that community. I just remember going out there, and for the first time, it was a couple of years, it was still at the Disney lot. And I was like, oh my God, like this is truly amazing. And really what I remembered when I went to LA in high school to tour USC, like we had gone to Warner Brothers, and it just brought all this feeling back. And I was like, okay, I live in Charlotte, but I'm going to find a way to work in this industry and do the things that I wanted to do. And it just required putting my foot down and the gas and just go. And so I just met as many people as I could to get advice, to go to as many events as I possibly could based on like a budget and flights and time frames. And I just learned as much as I could as well. And then on top of that, I felt like there was a gatekeeping feel to Hollywood. And so what I did over the last several years is kind of try to open the doors a little bit by sharing resources. And like Michael said, like finding people that I really like their work, and I would share as much as I could and just like be a voice that can show other people that aren't in LA and aren't in New York that it can happen and you can do it efficiently. Now there are drawbacks, but you know, it definitely can happen.
I'm curious if in doing all of this, you know, you're out here at Edit Fest, you're seeing all this, you're trying to get into scripted. Why didn't you ever make the move to LA or New York at any point? Why didn't you pick up and finally say, you know what, this is what I want to do. I'm going to move out here. I mean, it does seem like, I mean, you worked on a scripted project. You know, I'm looking, you know, you cut Grace Point. I'm looking at in 2023. That's a scripted show. And you've done some other scripted stuff here and there. And so you've gotten the bug for it. You've gotten the connections. You've met all these people. I'm sure at some point there's got to be a nagging voice in your head that says, let's move to Los Angeles.
I mean, that voice has been around my entire career.
I mean, you've done well enough for yourself. I'm just curious why you never did.
Yeah, I think I always felt like I told you a little bit about kind of feeling a fish out of water in film school. I almost like embraced that feeling, that uncomfortable idea that the pressure of not being in LA and not being in New York and not being fully there almost fuels like my passion to accomplish the goal even more. And I don't know if that really makes much sense because everybody's going to just move to LA. Like you already know the community, but I almost feel like it makes me hungrier to figure it out and to figure it out with like a work-life balance and a cost of living that really resonates with me. You know, like I said, is like my family was blue collar in terms of like small businesses. And I've seen like financial issues over the years with, you know, businesses failing and how that can like really affect a long-term family. I think I was just always like, I'll figure out how to save money and keep costs down while also pursuing this crazy dream that I have in becoming a filmmaker. So yeah, there was like a mix of like pressure that I put on myself to kind of figure it out while not being there.
That's so interesting. No, I mean, that totally makes sense. And I feel like there's more and more people, a lot of people who edit for a living or work in editorial that like make their full time working in editorial. And if you ask them what ACE was, they wouldn't know what you were talking about. Like, it's like all over the country. There's a lot of these people who spend their day in and day out working in post and all they do is post, but they've never heard of the MPEG career ladder. It's clearly becoming more and more popular to set up a kind of post-career wherever you happen to be and wherever you can make it work. And then, pick up all the projects that kind of come your way, especially if you're creating a space for yourself online as somebody who is an authority in these topics.
Corey just likes the challenge.
He likes the drive.
Challenge is, can I live in I'm betting my entire life on the fact that I can live in North Carolina and then become a fully scripted. Yeah.
Listen to how you say that.
I like the motivation, the drive.
On trying to do it, not being in the hubs. That means it has to happen because you are you're putting your chips all in. There's no backup plan for me.
It's true, yeah.
And I'm all in and I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know what the end is going to look like. But in the meantime, trying to figure that part out is a lot of fun. And I can do these things. I can fly to these towns. If I fly to New York City and work in person with a director, for example, well, that's the same commute time as somebody in upstate coming down into the city. So it just gives you an example of like, it's possible. And I think we just put too much red tape on the idea. And I know there's like union and incentive side of it, like that plays into, where you were hired. But I just been a person that I felt like I was always kind of on the outskirts and there was some gatekeeping involved. And I'm just a person that always had like, I'm going to do it my way and I'm going to kick down the doors and I'm going to teach people behind me how I did it.
I love that.
Yeah. This is just reminding me of when we were getting ready to do this podcast a year ago. I was listening to all these other editing podcasts. So not to shout out another editing podcast, but there's a podcast called The Editing Podcast, which are used to be these two YouTube editors and they cut all these like YouTube stuff for people. And I remember listening to their episodes and like their experience editing, which was this very like creator focused, YouTube, social focused kind of stuff. And I was just thinking about how different that is to our world. Our world is so much in-person coffee handshakes and stuff like that. But there really is this other world that lives alongside it, which is like your ability to network really remotely, your ability to like showcase your stuff online, your ability to like just be able to show off what you can do in a way that's not just in person over coffee and drinks. Like, so it's really interesting. I think there's really something to take away from the idea that like we focus so often here on this show about what you can do in person and what you can do. But, there really is clearly like what you've shown, a lot you can just do.
I mean, even hearing you just say like, oh yeah, I could just fly to New York. I can just fly to LA. I'm like, oh my God,
you totally could. Yeah.
You totally can. But like for me personally, I'm like, oh, that's a lot. Like, so I applaud you for taking that on and being like, yeah, I'll just fly. It'll be fun. It's crazy. Yeah.
I do want to ask how you learned assisting, because one of the things I know you for is you get Avid tips from Corey on Twitter. Like you knew, like, how did you learn all, like I learned everything I knew in Avid in a classroom and with people overlooking my shoulder and being like, oh, did you know?
Like on the job.
Yeah, on the job. Lian and I have learned these things because I watched somebody do it. There's never in a million years I would have looked up, because it's such
exactly.
I would never think that this feature exists.
Yeah.
So how are you learning all of this stuff?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was trial by error because, I started in Final Cut Pro and then Final Cut Pro 7 eventually phased out and then people started adapting to Premiere. And so after Fox Sports doing kind of this hodgepodge of keyboard shortcuts and learning how to make things very fast for me to get to air as fast as I could, NBC Sports then hired me out of Stamford, Connecticut, and they were an Avid house. And so what happened would be the things that I was cutting for Fox and Speed Channel, now I had to do for NBC Sports. But the difference was I had to fly to LaGuardia, drive from LaGuardia to Connecticut, and then sit down in an Avid, which I hadn't touched since NFL Films. And I had to figure the same timeline and deadlines while also figuring out how to operate technically at a speed that I needed to in order to hit them. So it was so much of like, okay, I have to figure out how to do this as fast as I can. So like I needed like these weird little buggy type fixes and tutorials. And so I would just hang out on forums as a watcher and just search for things. Or like, how can I make it work for what I was doing? One of the things you're probably mentioning is this idea that like Avid doesn't let you stack certain effects on top of each other. And so like I was always trying to find hacks on how to do that. And Animat, I wanted an Animat with a 3D warp. And I was like, how? It's got to be possible to be able to manipulate these two things. And so I just dug through like a decade worth of forums, and I found somebody that said, oh, well, yeah, you can, if you compound clip a green screen and something you want to animate out, then you can then group it, and then top on that, you can put a 3D warp. And it was just like these little tricks that I would find. And then I'm like, okay, people need to know this because I've heard nothing about it. Like you said, Michael, this idea that like people don't teach you these hacks. It only comes when you need it. And you don't practice it enough, so it's not needed. So it kind of falls by the wayside. And then every time I had a crash or hacks that I was falling into my own rut and struggling with, I would try to share those. Say like, this is what I did to fix it.
So you would just be working on some NFL package or some ESPN package or whatever, and then be like, you'd be like, shit, I need the static shot to match. And you were just Googling it. And then you were just basically internally logging all of this stuff and then being like, oh, I could share this online.
Yes. And going back to like learning like assistant editing, and that was all through online classes or old YouTube videos or people's advice that I had talked to at EditFest. And what was happening was that I was learning this as I went. So I took Master the Workflow course. I stayed in that forum and I would share things. And then I was also like, as kind of AI started coming on to the kind of the market, it's like I would then utilize, ChatGPT to help me, for example, figure out how to automate VFX IDs and turn those IDs right from markers into subcaps to like Evan Schiff's tool. And like all these tools I was creating and also leveraging other people's work and trying to find a way to make it work for me. And then I realized like at some point that I needed to organize all of this and share it out there, because a lot of people were like me. A lot of people don't start in LA. They don't start in New York. Really, those are the markets that utilize that kind of union model of upward movement. And the only way to learn it is to be in those hubs. And I think that to me was precious. And I just felt like I needed to share as much as I could and offer that for free, because I'm also like an anti-grifter of like sending your information out there.
Gatekeeping everything.
You say like, oh yeah, I'll sign up for this webinar. And then it's just like a webinar to get into the webinar. I just never appreciated that. And I just wanted to be a voice of reason and a voice of like, you can come here, you can learn what I've learned, and I'll share as much as I can. And I'm not going to charge you for it. And the other thing too is like, I've put your podcast out there as well as like a list of podcasts available. And so like people that I know are finding you guys through that. And I created the post-production resource document.
Thank you.
That is about a 49-page document. It's got a table of contents. It's ridiculous and overwhelming even when I try to like go back and remember stuff. But as I see people click on it, it's in Germany, it's in Austria, it's in Australia, it's in France. It has gone all across the world. And it's just realizing that like it's not just people in the United States that need this kind of help and resource document.
No, it's people everywhere
all over the world that are trying to break into their own markets. So it's like, it really showed me that people are hungry for learning and to do it with like a resource guide that allows them to kind of kick down the doors of gatekeeping and do it at their own pace and by themselves.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've noticed this as well, but I feel like, I mean, some softwares are still pretty good. Like you can learn a lot of like Premiere and maybe like Resolve stuff on YouTube. But a lot of the more like really, if you're trying to really nail down like a professional workflow or like a prim and proper workflow, it sometimes can be very hard to, because like this document you mentioned is like famous. I feel like I've linked this document to people and other people have linked this document to me or pages or things like it from it. But it's really helpful to have resources like that you can almost trust have been vetted to be professional and proper and not going to lead you down a path of like doing something wrong. Because I feel like if you look at like YouTube for a lot of like Avid advice, I've watched some of those tutorials, just, whatever. Some people will tell you to do stuff that's the dumbest shit on the planet. And you just want to be like, I hope nobody is like importing ProRes RAW footage into Avid and trying to cut with it like this guy is telling you to do, stuff like that. So it's frustrating because we do live in a world where so many people want this information, but there are so many people out there who are giving bad information these days too.
Well, and a quick aside on just that idea is now that, I have gotten into ACE as an affiliate member, I serve on the internship committee in New York, and then I'm also on the education committee with like amazing people, like some of the most giving editors and assistant editors out there that are willing to help mentor people and set education standards and try to streamline some of this learning. And even though I'm not in the hub of LA and not in New York, I'm still finding a way to impact those communities and things that are beneficial to helping young filmmakers learn more than I did when I went to film school, not knowing who Wong Kar-wai was.
Yeah. That kind of leads into one of our questions, which was, so I know you do all of this stuff online. You're definitely a figure online, but it is remarkable even through all of that, how you do maintain connections with a lot of people in Los Angeles, especially. I don't know about New York. Our mixer, Zach, right? Like he was like, oh, you should get Corey on the show. So like you and Zach are friends. You have friendships with people. I mean, we were just chatting with your cousin.
Oh, yeah.
Tyler.
Yeah. Which I was like, oh my God, we're interviewing. Yeah.
By the way, you're going to make his day. He's getting a shout out on this podcast.
There you go.
There you go.
I'm curious your strategy outside of just being a force for good online and the documents and everything that you make. How are you personally maintaining friendships, relationships, networks, connections with people in Los Angeles or New York or wherever?
Yeah, like Zach and I text a lot. We're both parents now with young kids. And I think that bonds people together. You can kind of share war stories in a sense. Yes, it's a strategy of like meeting people online and like trying to put faces to the name once I fly out there. But I always view networking. I hate networking. I really like meeting people that I can relate to as like friends and go have a beer with or something like that. And to me, that is really how I maintain friendships, is like the people that I would hang out with, the people that I would go, watch a movie or have a beer or whatever it is. Those are the people I seek out. And the people that relate to that, I think, find me as well. And then, I do fly out there. I try to stay consistent. Like EditFest is a big one where I'll stay out there for a week and try to grab coffee or lunch with people that I have met over the years online. And I think it is like, you see the purple guy on my Twitter avatar, and then there is like this weird like reveal, right? It's like, it's like speed dating.
The man behind the curtain.
Yeah, my Wizard
The man
of
behind the
Oz.
glasses.
And I'm working on a film. I've worked on it for 3 years. It's about the crypto space and art and how the history of crypto art and the blockchain and how that stuff lives. And it's this weird kind of gaggle of people of different communities all over the world. And I think over the last 3 years being on that film, it opened my eyes to community and what that really means. And the director is in New York, and he was a very big proponent of building community in the art space. And I translated that into the post space. And I realized that like having an avatar was interesting. It could make somebody identifiable and remembered. And then it just became this kind of this spirit, of Twitter, where I would just have this little, purple guy.
That's so funny.
Just floating around everywhere. Like, who the hell is this? And why have never heard of him?
I want to backtrack a second because you were talking about when you fly out here to LA, you are, you're staying here for a week. So I'm assuming that are you staying with friends? Or are you just staying at a hotel?
Yeah, it's really short. Now what I do is I kind of like budget weekends and weeks where I know, okay, this is going to cost me X, and I need to make sure that during the year I have enough jobs to then pay for the trips to get out there. And that's like my budget. I'll stay at an Airbnb or a hotel, whatever I feel like is like more central or the cheapest.
And how often are you trying to fly out here?
For LA, it's a little bit bigger trip and more time consuming. So like I'll try to stay like 2 trips out there a year where I stay a little bit longer. But like New York, for example, I'm on the internship committee up there for ACE. So in a couple weeks, like they have a day of event, and I'm flying in the morning on American, and there was a cheap flight back for, $70 in the evening. So like, I'll just go up there for the day. And so like, I'm just trying to do that more.
You must have so many flight points that like, I don't know, you might just get to the point where you don't have to pay for a flight anymore.
Well,
There's gonna be so many points that you have
for a hotel on my credit card. And it does kind of add up, and you just kind of like utilize and figure out, okay, this point flight is really expensive, so I'll pay cash for it versus like blow the points on it, and then use those points for an LA trip that usually is more expensive.
You know, Corey, while we have you here, I guess we should announce that we're doing our ACE. We have Lian and I have to do an ACE intern panel we've been asked to do as well. So we're going to do our own panel. Do you have any advice for us? What should we be talking about on our panel? I think what Lian and I settled on was like, we do this a lot where we have to talk to people who are involved in post. Sometimes people who are wildly older than us, younger than us, completely different childhoods, completely different markets, completely different whatever. We've had to find a way over the last year to be able to, no matter who we're talking to, very quickly be able to just find common ground, talk. How do you use basically post-production as the basis for an immediate relationship with somebody that you otherwise would have nothing in common with?
Also, as a question to you, what do you do?
Yeah, what's your strategy?
Give us your strategy.
I think like what a lot of applicants that I've talked to personally, both who have gotten the internship, but also who did not, is the thing that they relate to the most is this openness of realness and the idea that you can share things that may not feel like it's just like, oh, well, the way you work in post is you network, right? That's okay. Well, that's how you get any job. And I think the idea, well, how? Like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Is it just like work, or is it like, are you building friendships? And I think going back to what I said earlier is there's this idea of relationships and networking that I don't think people connect the two, but like you have to be somebody who wants to work with for 10 plus hours a day and not just be driven to like, I'll only talk about assistant editing in this edit room. And then lunch, we'll talk about assistant editing again. And then at dinner, when we all have drinks, like we're talking about work. Like, no, that's not how you build a relationship with people. So I think like being real in that sense is going to ultimately pay off for any applicant. And the other thing to remember too is like, these are people that may not know the industry at all. They're trying to figure it out. There's some assumptions that I think when people talk and give advice, trust your gut. A lot of editing is instinctual. Like we've heard those things before, but like how? Like why? What does that mean?
I feel like, and this is always hard for me, they'll also say like, oh yeah, the industry's hard. Mm-hmm. It's hard to get into. It's hard to do. Like I almost feel like I want to always give the people forewarning a little bit, like be a little bit more specific in like, hey, it's hard, like even you, like it's hard for you, but you're putting in so much effort. Like not a lot of people are going to want to fly like every weekend, or I know you're not doing it every weekend, but you know what I mean? Like
every year.
Consistently, every year. And it's like that might be what you have to do. And you have to know that it's not going to just like come to you.
It's
like
effort that's not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's a little bit of work every day for a long period of time.
And it may not pay off. Like that's the other thing. It could never work.
Yeah.
Like
could never
what you
work.
said earlier is like, I'm betting my life on it. Well, I might end my career like I started it. Fish out of water, not living in LA, not living in New York, and not having much to show for it other than like a few screen credits. I might not work on a Hollywood film. I might not get the scripted credits that I, dream of. But I think it all comes down to the idea that you, like you said, it's just about putting in the work and putting your head down and driving to the goal and just not looking backwards, because like that doesn't do you any good. But I think what I learned late, relationships are so important. And for years, I bet on the idea that the credits and then somebody willing to see my name at the end of a film or show would help me get jobs in the future. And I think that mindset carried me. And I was like wondering, well, why am I not getting the shows and jobs that I want? And I realized like a lot of it depends on relationships and trusting that somebody else that you may know can help you get there, and kind of like blind trust in a lot of ways with some people. And a perfect example was after my time in kind of that short form broadcast television, NBC Sports offered me a salary job with benefits. I think I was 27. I think the salary was in the upper 90s, 80s or 90s. Plus over time, it would have put me in the six figures. And to me, that goes the idea that like, okay, I've finally proven that I can make money doing art, right? But on the flip side, it wasn't what I was passionate about, which was docs and narrative and long form storytelling. And I had met a filmmaker, Roy Carf, who we'd done a lot of stuff together. He told me, listen, I can help you get there, but I don't have anything. So it's either you trust me that I will help get you to where you want to be, or you take that salary job and you're kind of doing that work for, you'll probably get sucked into it and become, an editor in that type of work. I was asking everybody, like my grandfather, and everybody told me to take the sure bet because there was no guarantees elsewhere. And I turned it down, and I trusted a relationship with a filmmaker that I had done very little with at the time. I trusted his word. And since then, he helped build the career that I have today. So I think that is so important to realize.
Wow.
Like, sometimes you just got to go with instinctual feeling that you can trust a person. And I could have gone down a different path. Maybe he didn't get the work that he couldn't pass down to me, but it was an example of like just embracing a relationship.
I think what's also so important, and this is for, even us too, it sounds like you're also very much the cliche phrase of enjoying the journey and not the destination. Like you just said, you might end up ending where you started, but it sounds like that you're enjoying the journey that you're doing to try to get to where you're at enough that even if you don't, you're okay with it, which is also great. Like I feel like a lot, enjoying the process. I feel like a lot of us get very like, oh, I want to be the editor, or maybe I want to be the director or whatever. And they're just like, I'll do this and this and this until I get there. And then they either don't take the time to learn because they're too focused on this end goal, or they're like rushing something, or they want to like just make the jump and they just want to kind of avoid all of the other kind of junk that goes with it. And I think that it's very good just to hear your story about pushing through.
Mm-hmm. No, I appreciate you guys helping me talk about it.
Yeah,
no, great.
Of course. I want to jump into a little bit more of your family because I know you're married and you have a child, right?
Yes, I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We've been together for 20 plus years now. We survived all these years, and now we can live to tell the tale about it. And now we have a 2-year-old. So, and that complicates its own type of remote work and trying to network outside in these cities. It's very interesting to be a parent and being in post-production.
That's what I kind of wanted to ask, because we like to talk about the show with people who do have families, how they kind of balance the two. So I wanted to kind of get your side of how you guys, what does your wife do? How do you guys balance it? Especially if you're traveling, like.
Well, yeah, my wife's a saint for allowing me to kind of go out on some of these trips. When, the last trip I took to New York, my daughter got really sick and threw up like 8 times while I was gone.
Oh my God.
And so like, it is a balance of a team. Like, and I really do harp on like teamwork in parenting. And
what does your wife do?
She's a production manager. She works in production management with NASCAR Productions, where I started, ironically. So I think like her having kind of that type A, very organized mindset, and me being a creative and not a little bit more spacey with how I work, it is a good balance. But I do think parenting in filmmaking is very difficult. And I didn't realize that until I had a kid. I always knew it would be hard, but I think it's about 40 times harder than I ever imagined. And you really have to like be flexible, because not everything is going to plan. If my daughter is like knocking on the door, I don't want to ever kind of shut that down. I always wanted to foster a relationship to where I wasn't too busy to take time out of my day to be a parent, and I just be a friend to her. So there is a lot of stop and starts when she's home. But I think like part of that is the process, kind of like enjoying the process. And I think when you have a kid, you don't realize how much time speeds up. Where if you're with your partner or just by yourself, like you don't see time passing. It's just another day. There's no visual representation of time. And then when you have a kid come into your house, every day something new is happening, and every day she's growing, and every day she's learning something new. And you realize how fleeting time is. And so I just never wanted to be somebody that got too sucked into the dream of being a filmmaker and ignoring the aspect of being a parent. And so like that is a balance, and it takes a lot of work to do. Also, would they, I guess your daughter's probably too young, but would they travel with you? Would you be open to like bringing them with you to LA for the week? Yeah. And I think that is where like I want to get to where if there is a film, if there is a project where it required kind of like an in-person or a hybrid type workflow, that we could have that flexibility to figure that out. I think that's part of the process of being flexible and understanding like, hey, there might be times where I'm away. There might be times where it's a little bit more difficult for one person. But because my wife and I have so much history together, she has seen my dream evolve. So she really is understanding of that process. I love her for it. And I'll be forever grateful for that because I don't think a lot of people have that chance to kind of embrace that side of it.
Anything else before we move into
anything you want to plug?
Spew? Plug any
Go
last
read
minute
Corey's
advice?
document, everybody. It's very
Yes,
helpful. Follow him on Twitter.
Oh, I do want to ask, what is your dream job to work on?
Your dream show, anything. Dream movie, dream television.
They really put me on the spot on that one. I really think like I'm really focused now in my career in finding stories that resonate, like human drama, human interest stories with kind of like a level of action thriller vibes. I think that's where like I've always geared towards shows like that have this emotional level, going back to like when I was a kid and seeing, you know, and feeling those emotions in music, not to just be kind of like a throwaway film with just action wall to wall and no human level to it. Like I really enjoy shows and films that have that human element as like the thread that takes us through the story.
All right. Back to Michael's question. Anything you want to plug before we go into our Splice and Spew? Or are you good?
I would say like definitely utilize the post resource guide that I have. It's on my website and blog. I've tried to share and I continue to try to share. You know, I have things on my website about building a perfect resume that I would do, how to cut sizzle reels for shows and how to get your foot in the door that way. I'm really just trying to share as much as I can. So when I leave this industry, that I've said my piece and I can walk away knowing that I've tried to put my foot forward to help others. Yeah, that would be a say. Go to my website. It's CoreyScottFrost.com.
That's awesome. Splice and Spew?
Splice and Spew.
Splice and Spew.
Yeah, let's go. We can go first and let you think about it, whatever you need to do. Do you want to go first or you want me to go first? Do you need some time?
So I'm trying to watch Lost Season 5 fully so that I can do a final Splice and Spew. I don't have that ready yet. I'm hoping I'll have it ready by next episode. But I guess I should splice about what I have been doing, which is Hollow Knight Silksong, baby. Hollow Knight Silksong. I spliced about it last time, the price point, but now I have been playing it. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this is so goddamn good. We waited 7 years for Team Cherry to finally get this goddamn thing out. And it was worth the wait, ladies and gentlemen. It is brilliant. I will warn you all, it is so goddamn difficult. It is like genuinely one of the most difficult video games I've ever played in my life. If you decide to pick it up on your Switch or PlayStation or whatever, just be ready for like a tremendously frustrating experience. But it's like one of the most satisfying video games I've played in a long time. And like the level of detail that's just hidden in every little corner of what is like this cartoony little video game, this cartoony bug game is so good. It literally, when the game came out, it broke every video game platform because so many people were trying to buy it. It crashed the Nintendo store, the PlayStation store, the Xbox store, and the Steam store. It was so in demand that it crashed the platforms. So it is in fact great. It is in fact unbelievably difficult. If you, for whatever reason you've played the original Hollow Knight, this is at least 3 times harder than that game. But it is really, really great, and I can't recommend it to everybody enough. I apologize when you inevitably get to Morwing, how difficult that is, and if you want to quit the game, I understand. But anyway, that's my splice.
All right. I don't have much of a comment on your splice, but to transition into my spew, I guess, Cassidy and Michael always tend to rant about video games. I might have to talk to them about that and get them off this video game topic.
It's been 2 video games. It's been Expedition 33 and Hollow Knight, which have been transcendental.
You've talked about Baldur Dash. You've talked
Baldur's
about
Gate.
video
Okay,
game.
Baldur
oh
Dash.
God.
How dare you?
Baldur's
How
Gate.
dare you?
Oh my God. So I decided to splice. You know, you're talking about all these really, old school, complicated video games. I gotta talk about the simplest form of mind-numbing video games, which is phone app video games that require no effort, no skill. They are just addictive little mind games. This one game I got really into is called Fruit Mojo. All right, people, this is the most addictive video game. Basically, you literally drop fruits down, and if you match them with their similar counterpart, it merges into another fruit, which then will merge into another fruit, and it just continues on and on and on. And
Game of the year, ladies and gentlemen.
I made it my goal to get to the biggest fruit, and I still can't. I still can't get to the fucking biggest fruit. The biggest fruit I can get to is a watermelon. I don't know what the biggest fruit is because it's in a question mark, and I'm like, what is the biggest fruit? I gotta get it.
Who knows?
And it is the stupidest. I am very well aware how stupid this game is. I think by the next episode, I bet you I will have stopped playing this game and I will have forgotten that I even played this game because that's the way these games are designed. But right now I'm just trying to find out what's after watermelon.
Some people say the balderdash of mobile-based fruit video games. Corey?
Well, I'll take us back into filmmaking a little bit in the post side of it, is making a note after you've already sent the notes that I've now changed before you watch the next cut. I cannot stress how many notes I'll get after I've addressed for the last several days of all the notes. And they're like, oh yeah, this thing has been bugging me for a while. And then now we got to go back into the cut and redo everything. That it is the most mind-numbing process. I love the notes process, but like, if we're gonna make a note, let's try to get them all on that first pass.
Totally with you.
Yep, I agree.
Cassidy?
I shall accept Lian's challenge, and I will not speak about interactive entertainment. I also splice too often, so I'm going to be hateful. I am going to spew about my least favorite candy, and you can fight me on this. Don't at me on Twitter, anything like that. I hate Butterfinger a lot. And I was reminded how much I dislike Butterfinger. I went into the snack closet at work to get my daily Dorito, and I saw a Butterfinger there. And I thought back to all the times in my life I've eaten a Butterfinger, and I've had to excavate it out of every nook and cranny of my teeth, like a dig site. I cannot stand any type of candy that is made out of like a hard congealed toffee or anything like that. I don't know what you'd call it, butterscotch. It's like it's designed to fall into every single space in your teeth. It's like they must study the natural curvature. And yeah, that's my feeling. Taste is fine.
I cannot disagree with you more. Butterfingers
I
are
will
delicious.
also disagree with you on this one.
I cannot.
I love the toffee
Won't get
flavor.
on the Butterfinger hate.
Yeah. All right. I guess that's it, right?
That's it.
That's
yeah.
it. All right. Thank you
Brilliant.
for
Thank you.
listening to this episode of Sips and Clips. Follow us on Instagram at Sips and Clips Pod. You can also email us at sipsandclipspod@gmail.com. I'm sorry, Michael, did I cut you off?
No,
What
I
did
was
you
going to
wanna
say thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. You keep on sipping.
And we'll keep on clipping.
Bye, everyone. Sips and Clips is a podcast produced by Lian McFalls and Michael Schusterman. Graphic by Max Schulman. Sound mixing by Cassidy Legan. Sound editing by Zach Griffin. Follow us on Instagram at Sips and Clips Pod. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.